Harry, someone I know here, high carb, sad diet, Paul suffers from extremely swollen legs and ankles. Well, that's just water retention, high insulin. What are the key drivers in the sad diet? The type of swelling, yeah, high insulin due to excessive sugar in the system. It's excessive Randall cycle activation, basically. So high fat, high sugar. That's what the standard sad diet is. So yeah, a lot of people get this. They're basically waterlogged. The way, basically, if you go back and look at the video that I did years ago with Pim Johnson, and that was on the dietary guidelines and all. It's the first video that I did with her. I actually discussed Walter Kempner's research back in the 1930s. He was the original creator. Forget about Ansel Keys. This guy that came out of Germany, this Jewish guy, he was the actual originator of the low-fat diet. He really did the research and showed that you could he didn't know about the Randall cycle. Philip Randall had to work that out and publish that in 1963 in the early 60s. This guy basically realized that very quickly that if you go on a low carb diet, you will retain water far more. So in order to avoid that, he basically made sure that nobody took electrolytes. No salt, no nothing. So you wouldn't retain as much water because of the higher glucose, higher insulin response. And that's how he avoided his... They were still able to lean... And that's why vegans don't actually salt or anything like that much. Unless the ones that are, on a sad vegan style diet, and they get all fat and, yeah, and annoying. But they're more like the sad dieters in terms of their profile. But really, it's really fluid retention. That's what it really is. You can lower the glucose and improve glucose clearance, and reduce the effects, sort of pre-diabetic or diabetic effects with taurine supplementation, as long as they're not taking, blood pressure meds. I've talked about this. I've done a video on the effects, how you need to manage that sort of stuff. I'm not going to talk about it now. The video, I've done it. I've talked about it profusely in so many past live streams, and you've probably heard it too many times. So really it's water retention. They need to change their diet or take some taurine, which will force them initially to start losing and, clearing out excess water in that regard. But it's not going to be as effective as, lowering, the Randall cycle gradient. And that's shifting further away from a sad diet, So even moderately shifting and taking taurine will improve things. Let me put it that way. So I don't know the person how well they're able to move away from certain things, but even if they can take some taurine and basically also, but remember the blood pressure stuff, that's the critical one. And if they got swollen legs and all that, their doctor has probably got them on blood pressure meds and a whole lot of other things. And that is risky. They need to be managed. That means I would not give them more than 2 grams as a starter of taurine, because if you ate a lot of oysters, you could probably get that, and that would not be a problem. But once you start moving into the higher amounts, like over, 3, 4 and over, in particular over 4, that's when we get into areas where the effects of blood pressure meds and other things, lithium and all sorts of other things, can be a problem in terms of the way the interactions. So you've got to be very, very careful. But at 2, you may get some relief from the swelling coming down, and it may motivate them to make further changes. So start with 2, no more than that, play it safe, and encourage them to shift away from certain things. And that may improve that to some extent. It's not going to be panacea, but it will reduce, they may get a period where they may have a lot of water dumping and they may have a bit lightheadedness, and they may need to consume in that period a bit of salt, not a lot, only a bit, because remember they're on a high fat, high we're not, and so we don't go excessively. A couple of grams is fine, forget about what most of the idiots out there are talking about. A couple of grams, but don't go crazy either. But they're putting in some sodium, some salt, and taurine will improve things. And then as they can shift away from some of these foods, then slowly you could probably put them on a bit more salt and a bit more taurine. But take it very slowly and carefully, Dave, with these. And try and encourage them to work with a doctor to make adjustments to their meds, to check them and make adjustments. If they're starting to lose a lot of water and they're starting to, lose a lot of the swelling and all that, then encourage them to go back and get their blood pressure tested and, maybe adjusted, which would be a good thing. Slow steps, always be safe and take it just slowly. This isn't competition. We're not trying to prove anything. We're just trying to help people improve and also see the results and go, okay, if I do more of this, move away from that sort of shit crap, I'll probably get even better. So we want to encourage them. We don't want to frighten them by doing something which may derange them, because they're already in a very deranged state and it's been stabilized by all these drugs. We don't want to put them out of kilter and make them scared, is what I'm saying.